Well, earlier today, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker warned out is out. For more on the EU's perspective, we're now across to our reporter Jack Parrok, who's in Brussels. Jack, thank you very much for joining us. Literally less than 12 hours now before Britain decides its future. What's Europe's stance on this? Let's start with the politicians, because they seem to be the most vocal, really, on what's happening across the across the English Channel.
Well, indeed, of course, the European Commission here in Brussels is very much hoping that the UK remains a member of the European Union. Many of the members of the European Parliament as well. There is quite a big Eurosceptic faction in the European Parliament, but the rest of them are obviously pro the European project. And the national governments of the European Union are all unanimously in favour of the UK remaining a member of the European Union, even those that are slightly more Eurosceptic, because what it will mean is it will mean uncertainty for the European Union as much as it will for the United Kingdom. That's the position of many of the governments.
Is there a sense that ordinary European citizens are watching this, and whether they think that this will affect them?
There's a sense that it definitely will. I mean, it will be the first country to leave the European Union if it does. I think really, though, from a Brussels standpoint, there's an acute awareness of the real implications on policy that will happen here. Basically, if the UK votes to remain in the European Union, then the deal that David Cameron agreed with the other EU leaders, which means that the UK will not have to be committed to ever closer union, is the phrase, and the changes to competitiveness and the UK say in the euro single currency, of which the UK isn't a member. That will have to then be implemented, and that will have to go through the European Parliament, and there will be an area of policy that goes through in that sense. Now, if the UK votes to leave, everyone will be waiting to see how quickly David Cameron invokes Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, and once he does that, it gives the UK 2 years to basically negotiate its divorce from the European Union, and that's when things will start to get unclear and get pretty difficult, I think, as far as what the European Union says, because they really have not much provision for how those negotiations will go.
One big emotive issue in the UK is that of immigration. You've seen lots of East Europeans coming into Britain for work, and so I would imagine that on mainland Europe there's some people who worried that kind of movement will be harder if Britain exits.
It will indeed, and obviously for the nearly 1 million Poles living in the United Kingdom, what that means in Poland for their family and what that could change is obviously a major worry. But it's important to note that the European Union's position on free movement of people and services in exchange for access to the EU single market is non-negotiable. So that's something that exists, and if the UK wants to remain a member of the European Union, free movement of services and people is absolutely a vital component of what the EU's founded on. It's a founding principle. So that's important for the UK voters to realise. That's where the EU stands on that. And if the UK wants to change its immigration laws from EU citizens, then it's going to be very difficult for them to do so. What they have agreed as part of this deal that David Cameron put together with the EU leaders a few months ago is the ability for EU migrants in the United Kingdom to access benefits within the United Kingdom. That's a major change that David Cameron has agreed to. So that's where we're at the moment. But obviously it's now down to the people, the British people, to decide whether they vote to stay in or vote to leave the EU.
All right, so it's too close to call in Europe. I mean, in the UK at the moment, they say. Are people taking bets in Europe at what might happen?
So at the moment, obviously, there's pressures coming from all different sides, business coming out in different areas, but it's looking like an incredibly tight vote. The pollsters have been going back and forward. Obviously, the death of Joe Cox, the British MEP, last week changed things a little bit and changed the rhetoric, and will reflect on what was going on in the current climate of the referendum. Here in Brussels, really it will get busy and get moving in the wake of the referendum. At the moment, we in Brussels are just waiting to see how the people of the UK vote.
All right, Jack, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That's Jack Parrok, who's reporting from Brussels, of course, the centre of the European Union in terms of administering. And they're watching closely what happens in Britain in the next 12 hours, 21 minutes and 15 seconds. The polls open there. And they'll be deciding whether they stay or they leave Europe. And the fear on mainland Europe is that the Europe itself may be difficult to keep together if a huge country such as Britain was to exit.